Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone out there, hopefully you're having a fantastic Wednesday. I gotta say that here it is dark, it is stormy, it is cloudy, and hey, that's perfect because it gives us cover to stay inside all day and on our computers. Because what the heck are you gonna do? Go outside? Not going to happen. So everyone, welcome on to Computer America. Hopefully you're ready for today's program. We have none other than Derakhshani. He is our graphics expert, our computer graphics expert. Everything having to do with CGI, graphics cards, hardware. He's very, very, very knowledgeable when it comes to the latest hardware. And we always have very interesting discussions. Always like having him on. And he'll be joining us here in just a few minutes. But until then, everyone in the chat room, everyone else out there, everyone listening on IRN, thank you so much for tuning into the show. Today on the program, like I said, we have tons of topics ranging from the best graphics card of 2019 to creativity in AI and Adobe Sensei, what that is, and more. It's going to be a very interesting show. But before we get started, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including today's show notes. You will also have any articles that we cover, any videos that we show, any products that we mention. Anything and everything can be found in the show notes at computeramerica.com. While you're there, also be sure to check out the reviews. We have contests up, we have articles, we have op-eds, we have just everything and anything that you could possibly want. And insofar as tech is concerned, that's probably the best way to say it. You can find at computeramerica.com. So, as I said before we get started with Dariush, who will be joining us here in just a moment, I just want to say again, welcome into the program, and hopefully, hey, you're ready for a full hour. So, we're going to go ahead and connect, and hopefully, you don't catch him unawares. But here we go. So, everyone, again, Dariush, longtime Computer America correspondent. He has been a correspondent for the program here for quite a while, and he is a teacher by day. He also works in Hollywood with all of the latest projects and television movies. He's worked on all of them. So let's go ahead and bring him on, everyone. Dariush. By the way, this interview obviously brought to you by Skype. So Dariush, can you hear me?
I can indeed. How are you?
And we can hear you. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking, and welcome back on to Computer America.
Right on. It's always a pleasure being on the show.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So let's go ahead and just get started here with with the obvious. I gave nice folks before we connected a nice introduction for you. We mentioned that you teach classes on this very subject. Mm-hmm. You also work as a day job in movies and television shows all about CGI, and also, hey, you are an avid technologist just in your own right. Just in your spare time, you seem to like to surround yourself.
Nerd, you can say it. I'm a nerd.
Okay, so technologist is the PC term, but I guess we're going with nerd. All right, yeah. So, but yeah, just if anyone hasn't heard of you, what would you like them to know about you and your background?
I'm a nerd. Love computers and love making images with computers. A lot of fun.
Perfect. So let's go ahead, and you sent over a couple topics. Still trying to get them. They're kind of all over the place, and this one in particular, yeah. I think I can actually take out this %20 because URLs are fun. Yep, it came up. Take two in the next generation consoles. But yeah, let's go ahead, and I'll let you have first picks. Which of these topics really stood out for you?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly start with the gaming news. So that's the Take-Two CEO talking about how they can achieve photorealistic graphics.
Right.
And I guess I want to talk a little bit about what goes into making something photorealistic and what sort of claim that is to make. And I'm not entirely sure I fully agree with that, but I do also agree with that.
Why do you not agree with it?
I think the amount of effort, time, technology, development that goes into making very real human motion is still prohibitively outside the reach of any sort of, I think, commercial game. I think it takes too long and too much, and I don't know if an engine can have that much control over a rig.
Yeah, so something that you could probably speak to better than most other correspondents could. Compare this to, let's say, the graphics that people may see, or the CGI that people may see in television or movies, where motion capture has gotten just incredible ever since Planet of the Apes, and even to an extent, Lord of the Rings with Gollum and things like that. Motion capture has gotten amazing. So, what does a movie have over a video game when it comes to just kind of the fluid movement of characters and things like that?
I think a big part of it is the craft and the artistry and the time that it takes to get there. You need a very robust puppet rig for real animation. You also need some really very good animators to understand how the face and the lips and the mouth and the throat and the tongue really moves. Because honestly, it's not just about lip sync. And it's not just about this part of the mouth. Your whole body is involved in how you speak, what you say, your intonation, your context. And that takes a lot of time and effort. And not to say that gaming animators can't do that. They most certainly can. I think commercially, I think it's beyond the reach of a game realistically to quite get there. And I want to make sure that within the conversation of talking about what's photorealistic and, if the PlayStation 5 or Xbox 2 or whatever is going to be able to achieve that, I think we need to set our expectations. But in short, I totally agree because, it's going to look rad. Great looking games are coming.
Yeah, and a topic of conversation here for the past couple months has been ray tracing. That is coming to more and more games, and I think both consoles both said that ray tracing will be a part of theirs, where the PlayStation 5, and I believe we only have so far the Xbox Project Scarlet is the only name we have for it.
Right.
But they both said that ray tracing. They both said, although I think, and you might remember this better than I do, but I think it was Xbox with their Project Scarlet said that they were hoping for 8K 120 FPS, and I was like, 8K resolution is a priority for them? I don't know, but
I think your instinct, your opinion is very important there. 8K is not going to matter unless you're very close to your screen and it's a large screen. I think most important in getting to that photorealistic benchmark, ray tracing and proper light bouncing within your scene and proper material work as well. Skin is a very complex material. It reflects light, but it also absorbs and scatters light. And I'm no expert on this. There's so much that goes behind that science. But that's part of the photorealism. Ray tracing is a big step towards doing that. I thought actually a long time ago when HDR environments were being incorporated into games and sort of getting some reflections, I thought that was the real first step to this ray tracing step.
Yeah, and obviously it's leaps and bounds getting better. They just had a new update where, of all games, speaking of kind of gaming news, we covered this yesterday. Minecraft, of all games, just got themselves a texture pack that actually utilized ray tracing, and it was a photorealistic in as far as Minecraft is concerned. I mean, the water looked gorgeous, everything looked gorgeous. It's just you're seeing even older games getting updated with these better graphics. So I don't think you have to wait till and this is something that I'm sure that you've noticed as well, where the next gen of consoles to me, it always seemed like, of course, there's the economics of buying in bulk, because obviously if you buy the parts for 5 million Xboxes, you're going to be able to afford something that, in my head back in the day, was like $1,000 or $1,500 gaming PC, but the economics of it all work into a console, and of course everyone programs for it and blah blah blah. But the point is that if you want to see what the next gen console looks like, don't you think that we could probably look at today's higher end PCs and say
Yes.
this is what they're capable of?
Absolutely. I mean, the console is a PC. It's I don't want to say single use PC, but that's sort of what it is. It has its lane and it drives in it beautifully. Computers, what I've got under my desk and what you've got and what a lot of your listeners have, it's a first indication of what kinds of things you can see in console is going to be there. And that huge ground and huge props to Nvidia for sort of making this really part of the public discussion and what ray tracing is, and that it is really important. So if you have an RTX card, you're going to start to see more of that, which is a more accurate way of displaying reflections. That's really at its core what's really the huge leap in visual advancement.
Right, yeah, and obviously I spoke to this the other day, where instead of, in some cases with video games and mirrors, the mirror would look just kind of like a portal to another dimension, where it would just be your character kind of mirrored onto the mirror. But with ray tracing, I guess you'd see all the detail behind the character, and it would actually show environmental detail.
And, and anytime anything moves, when you see that movement in the reflection, like water.
Right.
It has a profound effect on how we visualize what we're seeing.
Right. So, looking at this article again, I think you're right, saying that consoles could achieve photorealistic graphics. I'm glad that they included the qualifying word "could."
Good.
I remember back in the 90s, they said that we were only a couple, I think it was like the Atari, what was a giant head console where they had VR? It was like the Atari VR or something like that. And it was, you could play like battle tanks and stuff. And it was like a kind of line art and stuff like that. Or was it?
Oh, Vector. Vector.
Vector. It was either like Atari or Nintendo VR. And they said that, VR is going to be realistic within 5-10 years. Here we are almost to 2020, a couple decades later, and everyone's kind of saying, VR is going to hit it any year now. It's really going to hit its stride. Actually, I have a question for you, because obviously you're a parent. There's been a lot of conversation about video games and recent horrible tragedies. Not going to get into those kinds of things, but I did want to ask you about the importance of photorealistic and kind of your feelings as obviously someone who plays. And you sent the 1980s Atari Secret VR experiment. We'll go ahead and throw that up on the video portion.
Looks like a great article to read.
It's a very interesting part of technology history. But but my point was about photorealistic. The more realistic we get, the more that conversation I feel like is going to keep happening, where the next Rainbow Six or the next Call of Duty or the next Battlefield is going to be so realistic. People are going to come at it and say, well, where's the line between reality and fiction and entertainment? Just for you, your job is to make things as real as possible, but we still need to have that level of detachment to say this is still entertainment. Is there a line that we need to cross? Because this is never like this. We can't say, back in the early 1900s we had photorealistic video games and it went really well. This has never happened in the history of humans ever. So what do you think about the next coming years?
I think we've had a form of VR in sports. Sports are a fantastic way to have a society have violence in a kind of a sanctioned way, and a lot of people live vicariously through that. Video games are the same. I think when they start looking, real, or when you put VR on and it looks like the holodeck on Star Trek,
right?
it's going to be a difficult conversation to have, because I don't think necessarily, I'm no expert, that games I guess inculcate violence in people playing the games, or kind of push them into feeling more free,
right,
to get violent in real life. And yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's something that we need to talk about. I think it will create a huge safety in dangerous training. Like the military would have so much to gain from being able to train its combatants without putting them really in harm's way. So I think there's a lot of benefit to that. But do I think my kid, let's say, is playing Rainbow Six and it looks like actual video footage of,
right,
I think it would be disturbing, and I think he wouldn't play it. And I think that is an important marker. That line I think you're talking about is almost an artistic line,
right,
where if we're seeing real violence, there's going to be some revulsion to it. I think games will tend to not become fun to play, or even desirable at that point, if they're making, now some people are going to be totally into it, absolutely, and that's kind of cool, but I think
yeah,
that's where the line draws itself.
Yeah, there's going to be situations where photorealistic is going to take place, and we're talking about violence right now because that's kind of what I steered the conversation to. But there's going to be, things like The Sims, where imagine The Sims, but everyone is at your command, and you get to play The Sims with what looks to be real people. They look, they sound, all that kind of thing. It could be very interesting. I think you're right with the violence, especially a lot of these video games. Like, there's a reason why even Call of Duty or Battlefield, those games, they still lean heavily on kind of the cartoonish. Like, they could get more realistic, but they choose not to. I think it's kind of exactly what you're saying. It's they having that stylized look is probably better for the game and for the players. So that's very interesting. I never thought about, because obviously we're talking about when it becomes possible, should we or should we not allow it? And we're fast heading to that. And you're right, that's a conversation that is kind of happening in the background, because so often, as I said, in the past couple of weeks, we've heard video games cause violence, video games cause this, that, and the other. That's a whole nother issue that people are talking about. What happens when it's hard to distinguish, like you said, the difference between a video game and actual footage from, let's say, a combat zone? It's that will be an even worse conversation to have sneak up on us.
Yeah. I think it's important to know. And it feeds into a lot of the conversations we've had in the past about deep fakes and what's the ethical conversation as a society that we need to have about when our capability to completely fake another person and basically have our say with what they're telling their audience.
Right.
That, I mean, we've had some of that conversation, because obviously newspaper and media, there is hopefully some sense of self-regulation with what they put out for their audience. So this is fact checking, exactly. Yeah. And I think lately, when we see these deepfake things, it's going to be a little bit disturbing, and it's part of the whole, how far do you want to go with technology?
Right.
And it's not a black and white issue. It's a very sticky, slippery slope. Sticky and slippery, exactly. Right?
And this is, we see it all the time with many forms of technology. I mean, there's just that article the other day about I think it was UPS. We've been talking about the coming of automated self-driving trucks and cars and things like that. UPS, or United States Postal Service, was one of those two, just came out and said that they had been using a self-driving truck to deliver between sorting facilities for the past 3 years, and they hadn't told anyone. Like, it was of course a pretty desolate highway, and no one ever really travels it, but they've been using it, and it's technology happens, and then we legislate it.
We do. I drove some of the way home on autopilot. It's amazing what we allow to happen. Because, I'm thinking to myself, I would never drive this fast with my only one hand barely on the wheel.
Right.
It's crazy. We need a little sampling of it to understand what it is before we can figure out what the ethics and what the maybe limits may need to be. But that is such a difficult conversation because we're a country found on
freedom.
Freedom, not having limits. Exactly.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I feel like especially when you talk about things like video games and computers and technology and that kind of thing, there are many cases where people say, well, they shouldn't be off limits, nothing should be off limits, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. At least being able to talk about it, we've seen where, and one of the biggest ones that we're not going to get into, we're going to get back to the article at hand and then we're going to move on. But I just want to say that another topic that comes up often is the idea of social media, letting kids on social media at an early age, striving for those likes, those clicks, those ever connected personalities. What is that doing to our psyche and depression and that kind of thing? As I said with the VR games, this hadn't happened before in human history. We're in uncharted territory. Things have been moving pretty slowly, I assume. Of course, you have the advent of penicillin and stuff like that, but things have been moving slowly for the past 25, 3, 5, 10,000 years of society. Right. Now they're moving quickly.
Well, I have to say, to play devil's advocate a little bit to your point, I think at some point there were a couple of people discussing maybe the dangers or the implications of people dressing up and in costumes and getting on a stage and acting a scene out. I think this is perpetually people or societies really have to deal with this. But I do agree that this is really fast and it's really good. I mean, some of the art that I've seen with digital humans is stunning. It's really, really impressive.
Absolutely.
So it's coming. Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I, for one, I don't know where my line would be. At what point I would be like, this is too gross. It feels too much like violence for me to play. But I got to tell you, I would love Rainbow Six to give me a little bit more of a real experience, aside from actually getting shot, because that happens to me a lot.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to lose too bad when you lose in the game. But hey, maybe the next generation, and again, getting back to this article real quick, just to cap it off there, let's see, they have a quote here. We have a new console generation coming, and by the way, I find it very interesting that so many reports when the Xbox 4 and the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox in the Xbox, oh my god, is it still Xbox One?
It's the one, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yes, we're still in that generation. So yeah, the Xbox One, when they came out, there were so many conversations about this being the last console generation. The console has lost its place as compared to PCs and things like that. But you're shaking your head, and you're right. It's consoles are sticking around.
I think so. As long as you have a TV and a couch, you're going to want a console game.
There you go. So, and they said that, but as I said before, we're reaching a point where you won't be able to tell the difference between a created in the computer and what's real. I got to say, where he might be right when it comes to photorealistic video games, I got to say, maybe in FIFA and football and NBA sports games, maybe.
Yeah.
But I would not count it out, because I'm already tricked sometimes by car racing games, by your Forzas and your Gran Turismos and that kind of thing. Car games are spooky realistic. I mean, they are. Yeah. They look so good. So I don't doubt that maybe next generation, and of course they have a picture of I think Red Dead Redemption up here on the article. I don't think the human rigs are kind of like we mentioned at the beginning. I don't think humans are going to be feasible for the next generation. But
no, I don't think so. But I'd love
next
to be
generation
wrong on
after that, maybe.
Yeah, right.
So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to some of these other articles that you have submitted here. And I actually wanted to gravitate towards one in particular, and that's the best graphics card of 2019. Because, So often, like I was actually just watching someone on it was YouTube or Twitch or something like that but they were trying to build a computer and trying to put one together, and they asked their audience of a lot of different chatters, thousands upon thousands of chatters, and they're like, okay, what graphics card should I go with, AMD or Nvidia? And he eventually did like a straw poll. It was like 58 to 42% when it came, and I think Nvidia won that one. But still, that's pretty darn close to 50-50. I'm shocked that's and of course that's chatters on a gaming website would be so split on kind of a clear-cut favorite. So you have an article here, Rock, Paper, Shotgun. Never heard of it, but very interesting title. And the best graphics cards of 2019. Let's go ahead and talk about it.
It's let me preface this by saying the best graphics card that you have is the best that you can have. I get very jealous as soon as I get something and there's an evolution or a new model or something like that, and I'm like, if only I just waited to get that other thing. So let me just say, just be cool with what you got, and you're gonna have a cool rig. But if you are looking to upgrade, reasonably, 100% hands down, get something with ray tracing. Okay, that has to be the first thing you look at.
Now, and before we stop right there, for ray tracing, and of course that's going to be the RTX cards, which they are a step up in price, and we're going to talk about that in price and that kind of thing. Ray tracing hasn't come to a lot of video games. You advocate ray tracing because like we've said, it's a large advancement in graphics, but at the same time, not a lot of games that you're going to be playing today have ray tracing. Why do you prioritize it so heavily?
Because I would hope that if you're going to make an investment of several $100 up to $1,200-$1,300, or if you're buying multiple cards, you want to at least have them for a couple of years. And I would think that with how quickly games are being developed and how quickly this conversation is happening, the ray tracing is going to be a big part of the games coming out, within that 2 years. And if you want to stopgap measure and you need something right now, you can't wait, maybe you get a mid-range card and just kind of deal with it. But ray tracing is going to be where everything is. It just is. So you're going to want something. Now, that doesn't automatically count out non-RTX cards.
Right. Because
updates, technology, it could be a dual GPU and CPU solution where it's being done, on a two-front situation. So get the best card for you, but make sure that you do your homework if you want to keep it for more than, a year and a half or so, that it's going to end up being a good open road toward ray tracing, if it isn't already.
Right. And by the way, just to another kind of point here, I know that we've been saying RTX cards. RTX is really NVIDIA's way of trying to capitalize. And somebody, like, I like NVIDIA. And NVIDIA is really the main graphics cards that I buy for all my systems. So I say this with all the love in my heart. NVIDIA has a tendency to be very anti-competitive. They tend to trademark technology. They make partnerships with different building, PC building companies, and they're like, oh, you want it to be NVIDIA ready, and it's trademarked NVIDIA, and it really pushes AMD out of the ecosystem. So NVIDIA can get, kind of stingy with their patents and RTX. So I did want to say AMD, I think since you were last on, they came out with their own announcement about ray tracing, and they said that they have this idea, and because again RTX is for NVIDIA, AMD has they've been kind of saying that ray tracing isn't really a priority, and now I'm trying to find this thing here where it's called a Radeon Pro Render. AMD can already do ray tracing on some of their higher end graphics cards.
Well, here's the thing: ray tracing isn't some new magical unicorn,
Right.
It's just a process, and RTX, not to burst any bubbles, is just a more optimized way of doing that in hardware on those cards. to run that instruction set. I'm not a programmer. I'm not an engineer, so
right.
I have a tenuous grasp at best on
well,
that
actually,
part of
we
it.
are going to hold that tenuous grasp because there's music playing in the background. Dariush, we are going to come right back. Everyone out there, more Computer America right after this great conversation, and we'll come back and talk about the best graphics cards of 2019. Everyone, stay tuned.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. And everyone, we are, we're having a fun time with none other than Derakhshani. And he is our computer graphics expert. We are talking all things graphics, things like that. And everyone, if you missed any part of the conversation so far, wherever podcasts are heard, search Computer America. And today's show will be up after the program. Thank you for listening to us live on IRN. But, take us with you wherever, whenever you would like. So, Darius, thank you for continuing on with us. And by the way, we're going to get back to the best graphics cards of 2019. But I did want to say, Darius, I don't know if you have any experience with World of Warcraft.
I don't. I have experience with StarCraft, but it's a completely different world.
StarCraft and Warcraft, both RTS, but of course the MMO RPG is definitely different. Well, the new Classic is coming out, and by the way, for completely unrelated reasons, Computer America will be playing Best ofs Monday through next Wednesday. Don't look at the release schedule for World of Warcraft Classic. But World of Warcraft Classic is coming out. It's indeed the WoW of 15 years ago now that you remember. It's not very often that you get a 15-year-old game relaunching like it was, like it's brand new. So it's interesting, but it has led to a problem in my personal life. And that, of course, being that all of my friends are contacting me because they know, of course, I do the show here. I just had a friend contact me, and if you're listening, I'm going to pick on you. He wants a budget laptop to play on. And because it's so interesting to see all of my friends, and none of them know anything about computers. And I feel like I don't do my job well enough because they're asking me, is this computer good enough to play a 14-year-old game? And invariably, it's like, yes, but actually, one he just linked me, and it was, I'm not going to say the manufacturer, but it was a laptop with an i3 with a 2.2 gigahertz processor, and I was like, even 2.2, like, I remember my computer back in like 2008 or 9 had a 2.4 even back then. I can't imagine getting one in 2019 with a 2.2. I had to tell him, no, don't get that one. So I just have to say that for everyone out there looking to get a new computer for a new video game, I know it can be daunting. I know it's scary, but it's just, Dariush and I, if you would like to go back to our November or December of last year's show, we did some pretty comprehensive computer building, where we both kind of built our computers, justified why we chose those, and we went over piece by piece what each part does. Dariush, and maybe you could back me up on this, when looking for a specific computer for a specific use case, there's only like 4 or 5 kind of big building blocks that people need to pay attention to, right?
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Motherboard, CPU, graphics card, memory, and storage.
Right.
That's really it.
And then like maybe power source, but hopefully it's from a reputable builder, and they'll take care of that for you as well.
Of course. Yep. Power source. And, cases, a lot of nice cases are out there, so it's a personal preference. Right. But if you're building your own, you're right.
I did have a friend that he was building his computer for Classic WoW, and his computer came with like 6 fans. I was like, this game is 14 years old. You are not going to need a wind turbine in your computer to cool this thing. But he's like, they came for free. I was like, oh, all right, whatever. So yeah, to all my friends out there and to everyone else out there who may be building a new computer for Classic WoW, it's going to be a pretty big release. Don't worry, it will probably run it. Get anything over $200 and you'll probably be safe, if I'm being honest. So.
Yeah. As long as this old game is being reissued to work with the new Windows, you're fine. But if it's an actual old game on old media, you may not be able to run it past
it's
Windows
for Windows 10.
7.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yep. So it's completely updated, completely remastered, and but it's still original.
I think an
graphics.
i3. Yeah, I think an i3 is definitely a good
The only problem I had, like I kind of told him that kind of a 3 gigahertz minimum for me, especially for an i3. Like if it was an i5, I might give you some more leeway with like a 2.6 or something like that. But I think like a 2.2 is just gonna, within 2 years, you're gonna be crying and saying how bad your computer is. Not even right out of the box. So, okay, so there's that. And again, good luck to everyone next week. Again, Computer America will be playing best ofs for 3 days. But we continue on Best Graphics Cards 2019. You can check out the video portion. We're going to be showing off all the cards in this article here. But Dariush, before the break, you mentioned that you had a tenuous grasp of ray tracing and that kind of thing. But no, it's more to the fact that ray tracing is something that's kind of like when a new Wi-Fi standard comes out, 802.11ac as opposed to 802.11n. You want something with AC because over the next couple of years, even if you aren't using it now, it's going to last you at least the next iteration and then into the one after that.
Yeah, I think if you tend to keep a video card for only maybe a year or so, then you got nothing to lose. And I think you've got really great options, both AMD and Nvidia. And it goes back to what you were saying with Nvidia being, kind of against competition by branding or keeping their patents to themselves, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Still, AMD usually has an answer for every major, like G-Sync and FreeSync and ray tracing. And I don't believe so much that that article that kind of said AMD doesn't or shouldn't be prioritizing ray tracing. I don't know if that's true or not. And if it is true that they're not prioritizing that, that is going to be a massive problem for them down the line.
Yeah, they said that their latest cards, which I think according to this article should be out by now, the AMD RX 5700 XT and the 5700. I have not had a chance to look at these things, but they're supposed to be 4K cards, which 4K 120 frames per second. That's what they're kind of aiming for. But it looks like ray tracing was just like how Nvidia definitely marketed the idea of RTX on, RTX off kind of deal. AMD did not push the idea. It probably could, like you said, it's a known technology, but it's not what they're kind of optimized for, I guess.
I think that might be because they are not in a place where they feel comfortable with what they have, assuming that they have something, assuming that they're working toward that. But I would be aghast that they don't push into that, and within the next year.
Also, they have a 50th anniversary edition of the RX 5700 XT, which is pretty interesting. I didn't know that AMD was 50 years old.
50 years old.
Yeah.
It was my first processor ever was an AMD. It was a 286 for my first PC build.
Very, very cool. Yeah, no, I know that they have definitely been around for a long time. It's just with them being kind of dormant in the 2000s, and then of course, coming back up. It's just like most industries, it ebbs and flows. Pepsi, Coke, all the other brands that compete against each other out there. One gets a foot up on the other. Yeah, speaking of the devil. But and by the way, looks like they also have a 32-thread Ryzen processor that goes up to 4.7 gigahertz. So that blows me away. But
it's awesome.
So when we say that Nvidia with its ray tracing, AMD will have an answer to it as well. If it's not these 5700 XT cards, which are going to be about $450 and $400.
Yeah, I mean the price to performance AMD has always historically been very strong. They may, as I said before, they may not have the fastest card on the market, or they may, but they may not be known for having the fastest card. But they certainly have a fantastic price to performance.
Right. So, and by the way, because we need to get a little bit more specific here, you mentioned anything with, any kind of RTX, things like that. And of course, things will get kind of backwards compatibility. Is there a specific card that you're like, you could just go straight to the top and go anything Titan branded that's still new, or RTX 2080 Ti? Is there any one of these cards that you're like, this one really, for the money that you get and the performance that you get, is it like the 2070? Because I've seen a lot of people recommending the 2070 as well.
Yeah, I think the 2070 is a really good choice. I would probably opt for the 2080 Ti and get the better performance. But I think 70 sits pretty well if the budget can't quite stretch as far as a 2080.
I gotcha. And of course, the Ti, when would people be interested in adding a Ti to the end of their card?
When?
Yeah, just what's, the budget can stretch to a Ti, but, is that extra $100 justified? When would you really want that extra money spent getting the next iteration up?
I think you should try. I think you should try for that $100. If literally, I mean, I respect it when you have a cap on the budget that you want to spend. I wouldn't take that $100 away from having an SSD, for example. But if you're looking at, 32 gigs of RAM versus 24 or even 16, that's if you've got a little bit of play there. Or should I get an amazing speaker setup, or an $80 Logitech mouse versus a $20 Logitech mouse?
Right.
If you have room in those areas, I would try to put it towards the video card, because that's really going to be one of the real core constituents of what's going to make your experience better on it.
And then, of course, to make things a little bit more confusing, if you're out there shopping, you're looking at these, you may see the word super come up a couple of times, especially with the NVIDIA cards. Super is kind of like their way of saying it's kind of like the halfway point. It's like the half-life of these graphics cards. They've made them a little bit better, and the supers are going to be a little bit more expensive. But overall, it's just, get one if you can. But, I mean, the previous generation, the non-supers, are still really good as well.
Yes, for sure. For sure they are.
Right. So, and again, this article that you linked here, they have everything from your basic 1080p gaming. That would be some of your older cards, which, can handle it very, very nicely. 1440p gaming is becoming more and more of a thing. This idea that you can play your video games on a wider resolution than just your standard 1080p like you would for television, people are, and this is something that I'm really looking forward to. Like, I know that when I finally upgrade my system, which I'm hoping to do here by the end of the year, my main monitor, my two side monitors, 4K. My main one, probably a 1440p. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I think I've got a 4K, but it's in a 32-inch screen, and some of the text is still a little bit too, difficult for me to read comfortably. Right. I think the primary screen you want to look at is going to be nice and bright and big, because 4K, to really appreciate 4K, you need to be really up close to it, or it needs to be a very large sort of screen for it. As far as games, I would love to run Rainbow Six at full 4K resolution, but I can't quite get up to 60 frames a second reliably on it, and I've got a Quadro 5000 M5000 card, which is I guess somewhere in the Titan range.
Yeah.
Though not optimized for games necessarily. So
right.
I'd love to see that, because but what that means, though, in the game itself, the textures have to be high resolution. Everything has, so it's not just a little bit more processing power. You need a lot more to get that high up. So, and 1440 for me is like minimum. I can't game at 1080.
That's something that, and by the way, I'm still running on a 59 hertz refresh rate monitor. I hear that going to a 144 hertz is life changing, but I have to, and I struggle, and I think a lot of digital artists will also have that struggle. I would love that fast, but the only panels that can go that fast are usually TN panels, which have a lower color depth than an IPS panel, which is what I use exclusively because it runs a fuller color gamut, which is critical for what I do, but it does max out at 59.9. Or 60 hertz. Right. And hey, if not, you can always check out, let's see, it's like the iMac or the iMac Pro, whichever one with, and I think it's the iMac Pro with the monitor that they have there, where it costs like $5,000. And I'm sure that, let's see, I think, this is the one I have here, looking at the specs. And this thing is just, hey, for the little price of $5,000, you can have a pretty nice monitor. I'm sure it will do a lot. But
is that with stand or without?
No, without stand. It's an extra $1,000.
So it's really $6,000.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So for that, I'd much rather get a couple of monitors and maybe switch them out.
Yeah, maybe use car to carry it all in. Yeah, I hear you. But but there you go. So and there you go. And back to the graphics cards 2019. I mean, these are the cards that I don't think we're expecting any new cards by the end of the year. Like, this is the lineup people are going to be shopping for if they are shopping this year for, because I know a lot of people are extending the lives of their computers. But if you are, looks like it's the RTX 2080. You have the Supers, the TIs, all that kind of good stuff. You have the AMD's 5700s and things like that. This seems to be our lineup. You think any of these are, like, I know that like a year or two ago, before Pascal from Nvidia kind of came out, we were telling people hold off. I personally don't feel that way. I think now is a good time to get into cards. Like, there's nothing really on the horizon. It's like you should really wait for X.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Aside from some of the model numbers under the Navi from AMD, I think what's out is pretty out. I think towards the end of next year, we might be seeing more, optimized ray tracing on board. But I think that's really the only thing. Go for ray tracing, get the best card you can afford, and enjoy it.
And by the way, going back to my friends and what they were doing, like seeing them shop for computers on their own, and they kind of have me do the final check. It felt so bad because, like, I know, like, they would give me a budget of like 800, and then they would race to the bottom. They would show me computers that were in the $400, the $500 range. Yeah. And it's like, even just like I eventually turned them to, and Newegg is not a sponsor of the show currently. Newegg, call me. But I turned them to Newegg and the refurbished computers that that some of the vendors sell there. I don't normally recommend refurbished, but if you're looking for that price range, you can scoop up something kind of halfway decent that could be new out of the box, $1,200-$1,300, get it refurbished with a warranty, and you're going to save 50%. It's there are ways around it and still get something decent.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good.
Yeah, so
very good advice. Yeah,
and trust me, they found some stuff. They're finding it. They're gonna get ready for it, and hey, we're all gonna have fun with it. So with that being said, we continue on. We have like 10 minutes here. This hour flew on by. We have a couple of topics we did not talk about, and let's go ahead and might as well remind people of the difference, because just a couple of minutes ago, you mentioned your graphics card and how it wasn't quote unquote optimized for gaming, but it probably would be optimized to make a pretty darn good workstation. You have an article here from GraphicSpeak, the John Petty research publication. John Petty, friend of the show, all that kind of stuff. They do good stuff, but I like it when they go back and visit topics that I personally kind of take for granted. PC versus workstation. What about this article caught your attention?
It's a kind of a gray, fuzzy line. What constitutes a workstation? I think in the end it ends up being stability over speed. Because a good, you can get much faster memory and video card clocks, but that comes at the expense of, well, maybe it's going to freeze up, and the 3 hours of work that you just spent doing is gone.
Right.
So I think that's probably the most critical. And I remember doing one of these online surveys for a new workstation building company, and answering sort of, it's really kind of an emotional thing, because when you look at graphics cards, you've got gaming cards and you got workstation cards. The hardware is very similar, between a 1080 and a Quadro 5000, 6000,
right?
Between the Titans and those cards. So what's it end up being? That gets a little bit blurrier when you're talking about a full system, a full computer, because my workstation has a gaming motherboard. It's got an Asus gaming motherboard. Same with the memory. It's not error ECC correcting memory. So, but it's still a workstation for a couple of reasons. One, I don't install stupid stuff on it, and it's meant for these applications. And if this application can't run because I have this other stuff installed, that other stuff is getting jettisoned immediately. So I think hardware-wise, the lines are pretty blurred, because you can build a workstation out of stuff you go and buy at Fry's, for example, or Best Buy or whatever. I think is the mindset, what you set it up for.
This article that you have here, kind of relates to that, where they have some of the points. This first one here, nearly 19% of respondents don't know the difference between a gaming and a workstation graphics card, or say that it doesn't matter. And, just taking that point alone, and of course, many of these other points are, kind of the same, where, they don't identify ECC as an essential differentiator between a PC and a workstation. It seems like there's a large minority, if not, kind of split down the middle, of people that say, if I can do work on it, then I identify it as a workstation. And I think for the people selling them, the HPs of the world and the whatever, I've seen it before. They'll take the exact same system, and depending on where they're routing you from, like if you Google workstation, they'll have a special landing page set up for you that says, check out this workstation. And then if you're looking for a gaming PC, they'll have a separate landing page, and it's the same hardware, same system, except they'll just throw in an RGB light and say, check out this gaming PC. Like, they'll label both to get your business.
For the most part, I think like the likes of Dell, for example, I think the video cards you can get on the workstation side are certified Quadros or Fire Pros, as opposed to the GeForce or the Radeons. So I think that's one distinction sellers make. Like if the nerd squad descended on my house and took a look at my workstation, it probably wouldn't be classified as a classical workstation because it doesn't have ECC memory for sure. The video card, however, is workstation class, but I'm not using server board, which allows for ECC memory. So it's debatable, but how I treat this machine, I definitely consider it a workstation.
And at the very end of the article, we'll get your reaction to these questions, and if people can answer these honestly and truthfully, if this differentiates between a work PC and a gaming PC. A couple of these here. Can your company afford to risk problems associated with an uncertified graphics card or lack of error-correcting code memory that could derail a project for days or weeks? Can the company afford a highly paid engineer sitting idly by while waiting for an issue to be sorted out? Do the savings from purchasing a PC versus a workstation really represent a return on investment? And I think that's a big one, and by the way, that's the last one. A return on investment on all factors are considered. Really, if the difference between a workstation for a business, if a workstation and a gaming PC, if the difference is, the hardware is the same, except the workstation is $3,000 more, is that $3,000 worth, I guess, like they said, people not sitting idly by, hardware not being, out being serviced, is saving that $3,000 really going to be that beneficial?
It's tough to say. Yeah, software has gotten so much better, and Maya used to have a lot of problems running on inferior graphics card, gaming level cards that didn't have the driver base for it. Now they can. I think the distinction between ECC and non-ECC memory, it's a fine line. For server, mission-critical data, without a doubt. Why even take the chance? But if you buy good memory and you buy a good motherboard and it's competently put together and properly built, the chances that you're going to have an issue while you're working in Premiere Pro or Maya or After Effects or whatever, if you don't have ECC versus good non-ECC, I don't know if it's really going to kill you. I mean, to be honest, I do plenty of freelance, and I do a lot of prep for my classes, and I do very large scenes and work, and it works fine so far. so far. knock on wood. But again, I attribute some of that to the Quadro that I have in here.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And by the way, just one other, kind of defining point here that they have way at the beginning of the article when defining a workstation. John Petty Research identifies the following characteristics. Blah blah blah. All of them are pretty standard. What we've mentioned with AMD and Nvidia. But then here at the bottom, I'm kind of confused. They don't consider anything Mac apparently because it's Windows Pro or Linux operating system equivalent. Apple is notably left out there. Apple, they sell computers that I would definitely consider workstation compatible. I wonder why they left that out. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I agree with you on that.
Well, and I'm just speaking of the iMac Pro or not even the iMac Pro, but the Mac Pro that
the Mac Pro, yeah.
Yeah, that's like $32,000. That is ridiculous and has to be a workstation. So there's that. Let's see. So we have about a minute left, and I know we're not going to be able to get through some of these other articles, although I do want to address one kind of big thing that happened yesterday. It caught me off guard. This is kind of for fun because we don't have time to get into another topic. Dariush, I'm not sure if you heard about it. Sony and Disney are having having a little squabble over who gets to play with whose toys. Spider-Man, what happened?
Money. Money. Spider-Man is one of those amazingly hot properties that Sony has, and I don't know if anybody in the audience is old enough to remember when Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and Hulk were just awful.
Yeah.
They were just not very good as far as movies go. So Sony had Spider-Man, and they had their success. But all the other characters in these universes weren't getting any traction, except for Superman.
Right.
Maybe a little bit of Batman here or there. But for the large part, nobody really cared because,
Marvel had not done their Marvel had not done their magic. So, now
that it's worth that much.
Now we can start talking about who gets to play with it. So I'm personally hoping Spider-Man gets to stay. He seems to be a really interesting character within the universe. But Dariush, we're flat out of time. If people want to find out about you and your writings and your musings, where can they go?
I guess on the internet. Take a look at Facebook, and I'm not that public lately.
Hey, as long as you are here on Computer America, that's what we really care about. So
that's
Dariush,
right.
thank you.
Here.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for coming on,
pleasure.
Dariush. Until next month, have a great one. Thank you so much.
You as
Bye-bye.
well. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
And everyone else out there, thank you for tuning in to Computer America. Hey, until next time, have a great day. Thank you. Be sure to catch you here next time, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. Again, no Computer America for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. Everyone, have a great day. Bye-bye.